everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight to discuss Jamboard. And we're really excited that you've all been able to join us for today's EDU on Air. My name is Anita Flanagan, and I'm a program manager on the G Suite for Education team working on the Jamboard product. Jamboard is one of our latest product offerings in the G Suite for Education suite and just launched just over a year ago. And we're really excited tonight to also have with us TJ Varghese, who's one of the co-founders of the Jamboard product, who'll talk us through, how Jamboard came about in the first place, and also just talk about some of the recent updates and launches to Jamboard and how Jamboard is being used in education. We'll also have a demo from Jordan Wesson-Stout from our demo training team. And then we'll wrap up with some updates and overviews from some educators who are using Jamboard already in their classes, and we'll hear about how they're using Jamboard with their students in their schools. Before we get started, I also wanted just to mention, please do use the chat feature as we go through tonight. We will leave and hold all the answers until the end, but please do continue to use the chat feature throughout the webinar. And if you also have any tips and tricks yourselves of how you've been using Jamboard in your schools, in your institutions, we'd love to hear those and see those being mentioned as well throughout the session. So first up, we have TJ Varghese, who, as I said, is one of the co-founders of Jamboard. TJ, can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do at Google?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is TJ, and I'm a senior product manager at Google. As Anita mentioned, I co-founded the Jamboard, and I work on G Suite communication collaboration hardware.
Great. And TJ, we often sort of say, instead of asking young people these days, what they want to be when they grow up, we should ask, what problems do you want to solve? When you were thinking about, when you're looking around Google, what sort of problems did you see that kind of really brought about Jamboard and that you saw from our users as well that sparked the idea and the vision for Jamboard?
That's a great question. So when I first joined Google many years ago, I was really fascinated by all of the G Suite technology that we have in collaboration software, being able to use Google Docs in real time and communicate with folks, around the globe. Being at Google, we have a lot of meetings, and as part of a global team, and so it was really nice to collaborate with others in real time. But one of the issues I found when I was in meetings was, even though we had video conferencing enabled in all of our rooms, sometimes it was really hard to spark ideas or brainstorm or really get collaborative beyond the document. And so that's what really sparked the idea of creating Jamboard, which was bringing that natural interface and affordance of being able to write on a surface area that's pretty large, but have the same real-time communication effect with others, especially in a mobile workforce that is distributed globally. So the entire goal of Jamboard was to recreate that experience that you have when you're at a whiteboard, but bringing G Suite and the cloud into the mix.
Great. So with those problems in mind, then, can you share a 2-minute update on, what is Jamboard exactly?
Yeah, so Jamboard is a interactive, collaborative digital whiteboard, and really what it does, the forefront of it is to help people unlock their ideas and thoughts and their creative potential. It feels natural to draw. One of the things that we wanted to, bring to the Jamboard was the familiar interface of being able to pick up a marker and just, immediately start writing on a surface. And that's one of the reasons why we created it such that it didn't necessarily need active styluses that typically tend to cost a lot of money, or sometimes have the hassles of not being charged, or people walking away with them. So we created this digital screen that had all the benefits of what you could have on a digital surface area, but bringing a lot of the analog whiteboard metaphors to it, which is what led to the design of the board itself. In addition to that, because this is a collaborative environment, and because this is G Suite, and because this is all of the Google collaboration technology that we bring to the forefront, we wanted all of the benefits that you get on the physical whiteboard to translate to the rest of how G Suite works. So, all of the files that are saved from Jam are part of Google Drive. It's just like Google Docs, where you can share and you can access and create different access levels. And the biggest thing is communicating in real time. In addition to this, we wanted to bring other features like handwriting recognition, shape recognition, and really try to bring a lot more intelligence into what you would normally do on an analog whiteboard, because we now have a digital environment for it. And then lastly, not to just leave it stuck on a whiteboard, given that we know that collaboration can happen from anywhere, your ideas can happen from anywhere, and you want to have that conversation from any place, any time, on any device, we did create applications for this that are compatible for mobile operating systems like Android and for iOS. And also, we've created a web application, which I think is very popular in the education field right now. So if you go to jamboard.google.com, you can actually access Jamboard from the web. So if you haven't tried this out yet, I encourage you to download the app. It's available for Android. It's available for iOS on iPhones and on iPads, and as well as for Chromebooks.
Yeah, so when we launched originally, I guess we did launch to the enterprise market, and that was in the summer of 2017, but still a very, very early baby product in terms of the G Suite offering. We have since then, though, brought it into the core set of core G Suite for Education services, and we've also announced a special EDU price. So with those we've definitely seen more and more adoption and traction in EDU. Can you talk a little bit about the primary use cases that you're seeing among our education users?
Yeah, we're seeing some very, very interesting use cases in education. I'll start off with the K-12 education segment. We're seeing a lot of classrooms where the whiteboard has been used, digital whiteboards have been used before, and they're being used to increase engagement and participation among students. So we often find that what we're seeing is that educators are often preparing their Jam files before the class. They're adding images, they're adding class activities, and during the class they're able to then present out, but also get collaboration participation from the students, either from their iPads or from their Chromebooks participating back. And the nice thing here is the fact that the Jam file is part of Google Drive and therefore part of Google Classroom. So it works very, very cohesively with what they're already using. So that's on that one segment. We're also seeing it outside of the classroom where Jamboards are being placed in learning spaces. So collaboration spaces, maker spaces, libraries, group activities, and a lot of educators are using it as a tool, again, to increase engagement. One of the stories we heard was, a group of students were using this to map out a storyboard of a movie that they were making, and they were using the Jamboard to effectively write out the storyboard before they went forward to make a recording. So that's in K-12. In higher ed, we're seeing, very similar to the collaboration spaces. We're also seeing, higher ed libraries using them, a lot of research groups. So different research departments between different universities, and effectively a lot of remote collaboration that's happening live in real time. We're seeing a lot of that take place. And then lastly, in higher ed, we're also seeing, and we've started piloting in a couple of schools, where Jamboard is used as a tool, as a remote learning device for remote learning use cases. So what's great about Jamboard is Jamboard works really, really well with the Hangouts Meet product. So this is our video conferencing product from Google, and the two products pair together. And we have piloted in a couple of schools now where we're able to connect classrooms to other classrooms in other places, and allow students and educators to connect and take courses that are not available in their local campus.
Great, that's awesome. So I know that Jamboard typically gets updates, every 6 to 8 weeks. What are some of the most recent updates and product launches that you think our education users will find most interesting that you'd like to share today?
And one of the biggest exciting things that we launched just very recently is the viewer role. When Jamboard launched initially, every file that you shared out was an edit access as a default. But now we've brought in the viewer role. So just like you share out with a Google Doc, where you may want to restrict access to the students or to participants by sharing out only with view only, that has now been launched, and I think that's receiving some really, really good success. The other big product update that we did was bringing the drawing and editing tools to the web. So the web application at jamboard.google.com now has a fully functional web editor, and I think that's something that has really, really caught on and excited a lot of the folks in education.
Yeah, that's great. And the one thing I wanted to say that's very relevant for my team before we close out, as many of you know, maybe as classroom users, we do really look at the feedback that you all submit through the send feedback button, whether that's on the physical Jamboard or through the app, the iOS app or the Chromebook, the Android app, or through the web. So please do start to submit feedback if you are an education user, if you're downloading the app, if you're going to the web. And we are reading all that feedback and we do hope to use that as we decide how to bring the product further into the future as well. So thank you very much, TJ. Next up, we have Jordan from the demo team here at he's actually based in San Francisco, in Sunnyvale.
Hi, my name is Jordan Weston-Stout, and I'm a member of the Jamboard training team. Today, I'm going to discuss with you about how Jamboard and the companion app can enhance your learning space in a positive way. In order to help frame this demonstration, I'm going to be creating a session that could be used to facilitate a lesson on the solar system in a classroom. If you've used other Google apps like Slides, Sheets, or Docs, you'll see how Jamboard can integrate nicely into that ecosystem. So let's jump in. The first thing to know is how you'll be interacting with the physical Jamboard itself. Each Jamboard is going to come with 2 stylus that do not require any type of charging or battery power. This allows you to, without pairing through Bluetooth or other types of technology, easily write on the board like you would a normal whiteboard. It also has an eraser that allows you to do the same thing. Now, before starting to create content, it's important to make sure that everything that you're doing on the board is saving in real time to Google Drive. So very simply, I can tap on the profile icon and add myself as an owner. This way, that I choose to create going forward, I can retrieve as well as edit in online and offline mode. So now that I've added myself as the owner to the session, I can begin creating, and utilizing the pen tool is going to help me from my first portion of doing that. So let's take a look at our tool sets. You'll see that on the main left-hand side of the screen is where our toolbar is going to be. I'll use a laser pointer to denote certain things that I'll be selecting on. So our first piece right here, the pen tool, you'll notice if I tap on here, I get additional options that I can choose from. The top 4 are regular pen strokes that allow me to have a different length and width of what I'm using on there. I can utilize the erase option as well in order to get rid of those lines. And the bottom 3 on my pen tool are used for the machine learning aspects. I'll use the handwriting recognition, which is the big A and little a, in order to label our lesson. By utilizing that tool, it allows me to take something that was not very well written with my handwriting and create something a little bit more legible. You'll notice that I'm able to resize the handwriting recognition as well as move around on the board as well. If I wanted to use the other tools of shape recognition, this could be utilized for something nice on math class. If I was doing a lesson for something like that, I can easily create geometrical shapes and connect them together and move them around on particular lessons if I'd like. for us, since we're working on the solar system, I'll stick with that. And our last machine learning piece is the auto draw. So if you were doing something a little bit more artistic, you'd be able to draw something out, and I'll do an awful job at drawing a sun, but hopefully it will denote and see down at the bottom, yes, that I did want a sun, and it will turn that into a much better version of what it was that I was trying to draw. Now that I have my jam labeled as solar system, I want to bring in some content from outside of just my ability of drawing things. So if I utilize the icon that has the magnifying glass and mountain range, that's Google Images. I can search directly for solar system, which gives me access to high quality images that I can pull directly out of what I searched into the frame that I'm working on. I can manipulate these images just as I would those shapes that were created, and I can drop this here as well. If I wanted to add a prompt question that could generate discussion between the class, I might ask something like, what planet would you like to visit? And this sets us up for starting our lesson with our school. Now, you may notice that some of the space on our frame here is starting to run out. On a traditional whiteboard, I might have to erase what it is that I'm working on and utilize something else on my frame in order to help with that. So if I were using, for example, a eraser to just take away what it was that I was looking at on there. But for our intents and purposes, Jamboard has a selection tool that allows me to group objects and images together. So I could choose to pre-prioritize by selecting the images that I want and can move them around on the board in real time. If I liked the way that I had a frame set up, I could easily add an additional frame to continue the lesson as it grows. By selecting the frame bar up at the top of the Jamboard, it allows me to easily add a second frame. I can delete or duplicate a frame that I'm currently working on. And if I wanted to move the order in which these frames showed up, I could as well by moving from left to right. You'll notice in the lower right-hand corner, a square that has black stripes on the frame. If I tap on here, this allows me to change the background that I'm utilizing at that time on that particular frame. I can have that applied to all of my frames, as you see over here on the right, or I can just utilize the particular frame that is selected at that time. Now, as we move past the frame bar, if I wanted to add something that's not just from Google Images, I also have the ability to pull things up directly from the web. So you'll see that utilizing this icon right here with the globe, this gives me a direct access to the web itself. So it's utilizing a Google search right in real time. I could then crop out anything that populates on the web if I wanted to go to a particular site. And I can add that right into the frame that I'm working on. If I had content that lived in Google Drive, utilizing the Jamboard companion app gives me access to my drive. It's important to note here that when working on the Jamboard itself, the physical kiosk Jamboard, that drive access is not available on the board. And that is in order to protect from a security standpoint, so that if you wanted to leave the room or other people were utilizing that, they would not have access to all of your files later. So if I'm pulling something from my drive in order to make that happen. The app is available on iOS devices, as well as the Google Android Play Store. And you can also visit a web version in order to have basic functionality. So here from the app, I'll look up a slide deck that I've created about the asteroid belt that I want to add to my lesson here on the solar system. Double tapping this icon that is created that I drag out of Drive, I'm able to pull out the particular slides that I think are going to add to the overall lesson plan. I can then close my drive slide icon, and if I'm done with it, I can choose to move that down into the trash, which is actually where I move all of my images whenever I want to get rid of them. I can then increase the size of what it is that I'm wanting the class to look at. And from our toolbar that we saw here with the main pen tool, if I wanted to bring something into focus, I can utilize the annotation tool. I could also add stickies if I wanted to for the lesson that I'm working on. So that brings us to the next piece of, up until now, all of this, I'm driving and creating this lesson plan, and I'm sort of working on this independently. But if I chose that I wanted to share this image to people, or excuse me, share this jam so that others would be able to interact with me in real time, I have a few ways of being able to add collaborators to the session. From either the board or the app, I have the ability to add users directly from their particular email address, or if I wanted to quickly allow others to see and be able to edit in real time without having to type in each individual name, I can create a jam code, which is an 8-character code that others from their app in the class or remotely can either join from the app or from the web viewer. In both instances, I have the ability to change the type of access that they have to either edit or view. Quick side note that if you are utilizing a jam code, it is important to know that only people who are inside the same domain that you are using are able to use that code. If I wanted to share with others who are outside of the domain that I'm utilizing, I would need to share with them individually. From another sharing tip, you also have the ability to add jam files to Google Classroom. Very much like you would other types of documents and content, you can assign them or use them as resources directly in Classroom. Since I have the app downloaded, I'm able to create this session in real time and then later go somewhere where there is a Jamboard and push this lesson directly into a space where that Jamboard is and continue to work on it. So I'm not at the mercy of starting at a Jamboard or continuing to edit where I go. This is a great time saver if you're wanting to create lessons or work on jam sessions outside of regular hours. You can create it, and then when you come back into a room, be able to push that to any Jamboard. The way you would do that is by selecting in the upper right-hand corner on the push to nearby boards. You will see a list of Jamboards if they are physically within your area, and you will tap on that and push it to the board. It does require authentication from the physical board and will tell you that you are removing the content that's on the physical board and replacing it with the jam that you are pushing directly from the app. One last final tip in order to make sure that everything that you're working on is done in the best possible way is that if you finally do choose in the end to have this sent out in a way that others can see without necessarily needing to edit, you do have the option from the board or the app to share the jam as a PDF or share one particular frame as an image. So now that we have everything created together, you can see how utilizing the app and the physical Jamboard together give you the opportunity to increase the learning space directly from where you're working. So at this point, I'd like to hand things back over to Anita so that she can continue on our EDU on Air.
Great, thanks so much for that demo, Jordan. Next up, we're going to hear from 3 educators who are already using Jamboard or the Jamboard app in their classrooms and in their institutions. So first up, we have Tom Mullaney from North Carolina. Then we'll have Emily Peterson from Iowa. And finally, we will have Ross Berman from New York. So we'll start with you, Tom.
Thank you, Anita. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tom. I am a digital learning coach at Carroll Middle School in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our students use iPads, and the Jamboard app on an iPad is a very, very rich experience. It's a great way for kids to get creative and to do it in a tactile way. I will share some things I've learned about the app from students, some tips and tricks that students have taught me. I've learned these, some of our teachers are using it actively. One of my favorite examples is we have a teacher who has a class novel, an ELA teacher, and she has a graphic organizer for each chapter about character, setting, and plot. And she approached me and said, you know, this is not super engaging and it's not collaborative. How can we change that? And Jamboard was the perfect solution to get kids collaborating. And so each time they have to document character, setting, and plot in a chapter of the novel, it's a new chance for them to get creative and do some really cool things. So let me share my screen and open up the app. Okay. So you should see my Jamboard app. This is on my Chromebook. It's exactly like it is on the iPad that the students would use. And the first tip is to use that auto draw tool. So you use that auto draw tool. This will help you make perfect lines, perfect for organizing information. So let's say I wanted a line right there. And so now auto draw will give me a few choices, including this dashed line, but let's choose this one right here. And then I want to also divide this information here. So I'll draw another line right there to make a little T-chart. And this time I'll go with that one. And I can use this selection tool here to grab it, turn it, and enlarge it. So there we go. And so now I have a nice little T-chart thanks to auto draw. Okay, so for frame backgrounds, if you notice the default is white, and there's other backgrounds, and you can access them up here in the frames, and then you click the square. And one of the best ones for math teachers, of course, is graph paper. There's also a blue and a black, but some students want more choice than that. So what they would do is that they would take a note and they would expand it so that the entire note covers the frame, and now you have an orange background, and you can then make that background any of the sticky note colors. So we do it like that, and now my background's yellow. So that's just a nice way to get a colorful background. Additionally, I can use that trick to simply divide a frame. So I can make the frame here, I can have content in the blue area and content in the white area. And so think about, you know, arguments for, arguments against, however you can do that. So that's a real nice way to cut frames in half or 3/4 or whatever you want to do there. From there, so sticky notes are great for text, but sometimes you want to organize text with text boxes that are maybe more rectangular or different shapes. One of your tools is handwriting, or excuse me, shape recognition, as you see there. And so I'll make another little rectangle, right? And so now I have a more rectangular shape than the sticky notes. And what I can do is let me make that rectangle a little bit bigger. And then what we can do with the sticky note is change that color to transparent right there. And so now that's just transparent text that I can now put on top of any kind of shape or box. And it's a different way to organize text and to have text in a box or a graphic organizer. One last tip is something that I'll be using in my practice as an ed tech coach later this week. So I have sessions to present about Google Tour Creator and Google Earth. And so what I want to do for each session is to have a space where teachers in my session can have a back channel and talk amongst themselves and ask questions and have replies and have a nice dialogue that is then, of course, documented, and it lives in Google Drive. So what I will do is, and I've already created it, in my Google Classroom for the session, I have a jam ready to go about Google Earth, and I have frames for questions or lesson ideas, and I've set it to all students can edit. So now they have that back channel that I can then check, and they can dialogue with each other creatively during the session about Google Earth. So that's a nice way of doing it. And if I wanted to make a back channel for only 5 students, I could just select just those 5 students to really make it collaborative. So now I'll stop sharing my screen.
And we'll hand it over to Emily now. Thanks, Tom.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Peterson. I am a 7th grade special ed teacher in Mason City, Iowa. I co-teach literacy, and we have about 75 kids 2 times a day. And like most classrooms, we have a wide range of abilities. So we have students who receive special ed supports for academics, for behaviors, all the way up to kids who barely made the cut for honors. We've had our Jamboard since October, and it is something that is absolutely a permanent feature in our classroom. One of the things that we've noticed since we've had the Jamboard is an increase in the transparency of student learning. It's an excellent formative assessment tool, particularly when it comes to entrance tickets, exit tickets, sharing the code with students, and very quickly we can determine, do they have it from the day before? Do they have it from the lesson today? What do we need to go back and reteach? Who has it, who doesn't? And know very quickly. Something else that's been a major component for the success in our room is, back up, Anita. Thanks. Is the collaboration piece. What we really like is being able to assign specific frames to a student, to a partnership, to a group, or even to a whole class, and being able to look at those frames very quickly, and students are working together. It also adds student voice. We all have those kids who don't want to raise their hand, who don't want to let people know what they do or do not know. And by adding a sticky note to the jam, we can figure out what they know without fear. All right. Something else that we've noticed since we've gotten the Jamboard is a shift to a more student and teacher-driven environment. With the use of images and being able to enlarge them and shrink them back down, we can build context for our students. Sometimes we think, hey, they're going to know what this is all about, and we start to get into a piece of literature or reading an article, and they don't know what we're talking about. So we can pull those images up really quickly and help level the playing field for the diverse backgrounds of our students. The Jamboard also, and the Jam, allows us to easily pick up with previous lessons from a day-to-day standpoint, or even when those lessons don't take place as frequently. We do an independent research assignment project with the kids, and they work on it about an hour every week. So we just add that code back to the Jamboard, pull up what we've worked on in previous days, and the kids can pick up right where they left off without feeling, what did we do the day before or the week before? And finally, we share the code. Oh, back up one more, sorry. Sharing the code with students. Because we can easily switch back and forth between edit and view only, we let the kids have access. When we want them to collaborate, we give them the editing rights. And that's usually a very short amount of time in class because we do have middle schoolers and they want to edit things. But then we put it in view only. And when it's in view only, they can review what we've done in class. They can review what their classmates have added and what their classmates know. And they can go back and refer to the things they need as they practice the skill. So sharing that code and having them be a part of the jam has been hugely successful. And lastly, our Jamboard adds an outstanding amount of excitement to our room. My co-teacher and I are always so excited to use it, and the kids get excited to use it. It adds engagement as well. One of the pieces that we love to use with it is being able to push documents right from the drive, right onto the Jamboard, the things that the students are working on, either on their Chromebook or on paper, and model expectations for assignments. This provides a scaffold of supports for our students. Sometimes some of our kids need sentence starters. Sometimes they need reminders on assignments. Sometimes they need examples. And some of our kids need extension activities. And all of that can be done with the frames, with the documents, and done very quickly and in real time. And we know we can determine that once a project has been started. And finally, the students are getting to see how we integrate technology. They get to see adults effectively use technology to be productive, effective digital citizens in a 21st century world. They watched us roll it in on day one, plug it in, fire it up, and use it, demonstrating the growth mindset that we talk so often about. Additionally, students get to see us model problem solving, whether it's academic challenges or challenges that arise when using technology. And they get to see how we work through those and move forward. And the more you use it, the more tricks you learn, the more things you learn, the more features you learn, and the more ways to integrate it into your instruction. And the more you use it with the kids, the more they can teach you as well. We've learned so much from them. So overall, the Jamboard has increased transparency of student learning, has made our room a more student-driven place, and allowed us to model in real time, both classwork and effective use of technology.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Emily. Last up, we have Ross from New York.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ross Berman. I'm a math teacher and a computer science teacher from Queens, New York. I have been using Google Classroom in my classroom since it came out. And I run my classroom. We have one-to-one Chromebooks. Over the years, in my math classroom, many people ask me, how do you do that? How do you run a math classroom on the computers through Google Classroom? And I've come up with all different ways of doing it and making it work. And it's been a lot of fun to kind of figure out tricks to make it work. But now that we have the Jamboard app, this has really been the single feature that has connected everything together. In a math classroom, students have that notepad where they're able to write, where they're able to show their work, and they're able to use the different tools that everyone has talked about so far to show their work in the way that they want to show their work. That's been a very powerful feature, and it simplifies the process of using Google Classroom, using the features, and getting feedback. The way I ran my classroom before is I used Google Slides. I attached the Google Slides to Google Classroom, and students had quite different questions to answer. They had to figure out how to do it. Now with Jamboard, I could attach a Jam file straight to Google Classroom and make a copy for each student. The questions that I'm asking the students are already on the files, and any scaffolds or things they need are already there. For each slide on the Jam, the students are able to answer the questions, show their work in the way that they want to show it, and then hand it back into me through Google Classroom. Google Classroom now has this great feedback feature where you could look at the Jam file and I could send feedback directly to the students, and it really makes this process a lot easier. I think before in a math classroom, people thought that this was a barrier and they didn't want to use technology in a math classroom because how are you going to show work? How are you going to use math symbols? How are you going to do these different things in a way to make it work? And I can tell you that the Jam app is the way that it makes it work at this point. It has simplified the process for the students and it's simplified the process for me. Also, the students genuinely love using it. After trying it in my classroom, we've introduced it in some other classrooms, and literally from the second that they've used the app, they've enjoyed using it. They come up with all different ways of using it on their own. I think the beauty of Jamboard, like all the other Google features, it's a tool. When I give it to the students, they kind of figure out how to do it on their own. I don't need to tell them how to use it. I don't need to show them the different features. I have students that show their work and then use sticky notes to write a sentence explaining their work. I didn't have to tell them to do that. They did it on their own. And I think that ease of use, the ability to collaborate and share and get that feedback right away, really just simplifies everything and connects everything in the classroom together. It has made my life a lot easier and the students' lives a lot easier in math class. I also teach a computer science class, physical computing class, and in that class they use Jamboard to really design, to storyboard, to brainstorm all the different things they want to do for their projects. It's a really just amazing tool to see how the students use it. They use their creativity, their their critical thinking, all of the different things that they need, all in this one app. And they could very easily share it with each other. They could very easily share it with me, and they could very easily share it with other people who are looking at what they're doing. I think it's a really powerful app, and the beauty of it is that it connects to all the other Google features, and it just makes everything in the classroom a lot easier. We are soon getting the physical Jamboard, and I'm looking forward to using that as well. I'm very excited to try to use the physical Jamboard, how TJ, I believe, was talking about in the beginning of my classroom, of kind of using it as a maker space, just a place where students can go and the students can use the device. I don't want to use it as a teacher device. I want to give the students the opportunity to use it, to collaborate, to design, to show their work, and communicate their thinking. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ross. Before we finish up and look at the questions, I did want to present one last slide from our deck here, which is a set of tips and tricks and resources that we've pulled together in a site on the G Suite for Education Teacher Center called First Day of Jamboard. I've created a short link here that you can access, but if you just go to the G Suite for Education Teacher Center and browse through the training options there, you'll find that First Day of Classroom. And there's lots of tips and tricks and other videos from other teachers and educators who are using Jamboard in their classes. So I'd encourage you all to go there if your interest has been sparked here today as well. So let's head over to some questions. TJ, there's been a number of questions come in. The first, I'm going to bundle two questions together. One is related to locking elements in place. TJ, this is something that I know I've heard from other education users. Anything that you want to share or add about that particular question?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of feedback regarding that. I think our team is looking at what's the best way to go about implementing that. I think one of the interesting things about trying to keep a whiteboard simple is not adding the added complexities of all kinds of affordances. So we're thinking about this really hard. It is something that we're going to look at. I don't have a timeline in terms of when that's going to happen, but I will say it is very, very high on our list.
Great. And then there's another question that came in around live screen sharing. I believe sort of as, I know there was a little back and forth, but I believe it's more screen sharing that you can then annotate on top of. Is that something that your team have heard much or spoken about?
Yeah, we've heard a lot of that feedback as well. And that is definitely something that we are looking at actively. So we actually have a team looking at that right now. Again, don't have a timeline to share, but we definitely recognize that it is one of the most important things that customers are asking for and users are asking for. So we're definitely taking a look at how do we solve that problem.
Great. Another question then came up around the web version. So it just asked if there was any plans to expand the web version to have more of the features that we see on the physical board and on the Chrome book or the Android app and the iOS app.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we want to be thoughtful about what we do there. A lot of the features and functionalities that we've added there on the apps is because you didn't have the desktop available. So for example, image cropping or, being able to copy and paste or insert things. So we're going to take a look at that. But yes, general direction is we want to bring all the editors at par together.
Okay, that's great. And then there was one other question, but thanks, someone has already answered it, around gaining access to jamboard.google.com. It is an app that's a core service for your G Suite for Education accounts, but you may need to talk to your G Suite administrator to get them to turn that app on for your domain. So if you do visit jamboard.google.com or you can't download the app to your domain, I would go talk to your G Suite administrator and have them enable that app for you. Before we finish up, any last minute questions or on the chat? I hope we got through them all. There's one more coming in, sorry. For classrooms who use both the Jamboard tablet app and the web app to collaborate, will the tools on both outlets eventually mimic one another? And that's similar to what you mentioned around the web features and being thoughtful about what you push out there. And then one other question, is there a way, TJ, to keep overlapping objects on the correct layers? It seems hard not accidentally bring a background picture over text elements.
Yeah, and so that again, when we talk about how we're going to solve locking layers, or we'll address all of that at the same time.
And it looks like there's a question here for Emily. Emily, when you share with students, you give kids a specific slide to work on. Can you limit which slide a student can access, or do they have access to all the slides, or I guess the frames on that Jam file?
Yeah, with that, they do have access to everything, setting up clear expectations about where you should be, how we use technology. So far, I think we've had like one kid who's gone through and messed up somebody else's. And they're the first ones to call each other out. Hey, don't mess this up. We want to keep using this, which is kind of funny. So, and because now that we can see who's doing what by clicking up at the frame bar, that's become a classroom management tool as well.
Okay, great. And there's one other question. What are the ports on the back of the Jamboard? TJ, someone's mentioned that we've tried plugging in devices and that doesn't seem to work.
Yeah, I think it depends on the actual port. So, we have an HDMI port, we have an Ethernet port, there is a micro USB port. I think I just need to know what you're trying to do and what ports, and we'll be able to answer that question.
All right, great. And then lastly, someone had asked if there will be an archive of this Jamboard on Air event, and yes, there will be. We'll be recording it, and it will be available for anyone to access. If there's no other questions, we'll pause for another minute just to make sure there's no other questions coming in. But if not, thank you all so much for joining us today. I appreciate everyone taking the time out of their busy schedules to come along and hear our update about Jamboard. As I said earlier on, please do visit jamboard.google.com, download the app, and go take a look at the offering for the physical Jamboard as well. And then please do just share feedback, use that send feedback button. We are reviewing all the data that comes in there, and I'm excited about what the future holds for Jamboard in education. So thank you all so much for joining, and we will hopefully do more of these EDU on airs and provide further updates to our education users.